Won't you pray with me? God, we give you thanks. We give you thanks this morning that even in the midst of some very scary things, you are there with us. God, may the meditation of my lips and of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. As many of you know, I was involved in the mission of peace in my senior year of high school. This opportunity afforded me the chance to travel to India. India is an absolutely beautiful place to visit for any reason. There is architecture everywhere that looks like it was designed by the most skilled architect of the age. Adriana, can you do me a favor? Can you just go press the space bar on the... This is usually a time where Desmond can go where he needs to go if he needs to, and I actually have pictures this morning. So this is a picture of a building in India, right? It looks amazing. The temples and places of worship are made up with the most amazing statues and portraits. This is 3 of the Buddhas in the Buddhist temple, right? They're solid gold, and they're huge. They're like 6 feet tall, each of them, right? So it's amazing. Even in the middle of nowhere, there is a clear distinction between the places of worship and the rest of the village. It is easy to get lost in the beauty of it all. Thank you so much. When I read this week's gospel text, it was easy to see the similarities between my awe-filled experience in India and the experience of the group of people in the synagogue. I am sure that if you took a minute, you could picture it too. A group of tourists is staring and talking about the most ornate building of the age. Herod the Great had spent 80 years, refurbishing the temple. No expense was spared. And the greatest artisans of the age were hired to decorate the building. Gold and silver plated gates and doors were placed throughout the temple to add to the beauty and the nature of the temple. If you have ever been on a trip to a place where there is something amazing to look at, even if it is just down the shore, you know what it's like to get lost in the beauty of that place. And the people who live in the tourist destinations year-round get kind of sick, but also used to all of the people who travel to these destinations just to gawk. You can probably imagine this part of it too, right? That the people who live in the tourist destinations have grown accustomed to slowing down or walking or driving around the tourists and even shake their head a little bit at these people who are awestruck. The people who lived and worshiped regularly at the temple were able to just keep walking as if no one was there. But Jesus saw these people. Jesus saw them adoring the beauty of this material place of the temple. As I said, the temple was built for just such a purpose. The artisans designed it so that it could be admired in such a way. It was for the glory of God. It was designed to celebrate the amazingness of who God was to these people. And while all of this is true, Jesus' ministry is close to an end. And so he doesn't have time to appease these tourists. Instead, he drops a bomb. He gives them the most heartbreaking news. He tells them that this temple that they had spent so much time refurbishing and building up and making glory-filled will be destroyed. And that not even a rock will be left standing. And while this might be hard to hear and may seem rash to those of us who are reading it today, remember that Jesus is close to the end. His teaching in the temple, this section of teaching, is the last straw for the temple leaders who would later have Jesus sent to trial. Jesus could tell the time was coming and needed to make sure that his disciples were ready. He needed to make sure that his disciples knew what they were doing for the time when Jesus was gone. There is some debate about whether these events described in this passage are meant to predict the immediate future or things that will happen far in the future. To be totally honest, some of these things in this Gospel of Luke, in this particular passage, sound like things we are experiencing today. It is unclear when exactly Jesus is talking about. But what is clear is that Jesus wanted to prepare his followers for when the turmoil would strike. When people would pretend to be Jesus, when persecution, abuse, and arrest would come. Jesus wanted his followers to be prepared to stand firm in the midst of the world falling apart. Verse 19 of our text today, the final verse that we heard says, "By your endurance you will gain your souls." This is what the version we read, the NRSV, says. It makes it seem like keeping a level head when everyone around you is panicking is how people will learn to follow Jesus. The NIV says something similar by stating that you should stand firm and you will win life. But is this really similar? Or does one have a different element? An element that suggests self-preservation is important too. The CEB gives us a clearer picture by when it says, "By holding fast, you will gain your lives." So now wait a second. Is Jesus telling his followers how to take care of themselves or how to witness to the world? If we are honest, it is easy to see both in this passage. It could be said that one does not negate or take away from the other. However, when Jesus was close to suffering his own death for the sake of the world, it is more likely that is it likely that Jesus would be telling his followers how to preserve their own lives? Maybe. Maybe that's what faith is. Saving yourself. But it feels much more likely that Jesus' followers are called into living sacrificial witness of faith. That even in the midst of devastation and destruction, Jesus' followers are able to hold on to this faith. Not for self-preservation, not for the promise of a life free from suffering, but for the hope that life is more than what people can see, and that love is always worth living for and dying for. Can you guess what the gospel proclaims as the thing that should call our attention the most? The thing that catches our breath and distracts us from the world around us? I'll give you a hint. It's not the ornately beautiful temple made by human hands. It is a willingness to live a life of love and transformation, even in the face of opposition and conflicts, even in the midst of turmoil and strife. We can be certain that structures, systems, and empires will rise and fall. But we can also rest assured that if we are faithful to God, God will be faithful to us. May we be reminded of God's strength and firm foundation in our darkest and scariest moments. May it be so. Amen.